guys, it's Buddy Lee, Last Place Productions here. Today we're going to be covering the 2018 Husqvarna TC 85 that I bought for my son, and kind of what it costs to add all the parts and set it up for trail riding, as this is a motocross bike. They don't really make trail bikes, you know, as far as like serious bikes with good suspension in this size for kids quite yet. If you're into two strokes, they're pretty much motocross bikes. So essentially I'm going to break down what was done to this bike the same way I did Jimmy's 65 SX KTM. This is pretty much a KTM 85 SX, but it has Husqvarna colors and the plastics are different. And we'll just be getting to that, and I'll kind of go through it item by item, and then we'll cover the cost as well, and what I have total into this bike, and what you could possibly, you know, be looking to spend if you want to convert one of these bikes for trail use and things of that general nature. So we'll get to it. So starting on the engine side of things, the first thing that I would suggest is popping your timing cover and putting a flywheel weight on it. That definitely helps with the low end of the bike and has less stalling. A big difference between this and the 65 is the case is set up way higher than it was on the 65. So the issue that I ran into on the 65 was once you put the spacer in for the added width out the side of the motor that the flywheel adds, is the case was getting scratched up by the shifter, and I could only put the shifter out so far. Cool thing about these new motors is it's set up higher, so the shifter is not impeded by anything. So that's definitely a plus on a newer bike. As far as what I do, because we travel from here in Placerville, you know, to go ride in Colorado and places like that that are, you know, up to 10,000 feet in elevation, I prefer to run the Electron carb because it smooths the power out, number one, and it compensates for pressure and temperature differences, and these small bore two strokes are really susceptible to those changes in the way they run. So in order to get the most consistent running out of it, I went with the Electron, and I can't say enough good stuff about these things. I bought a new one for this one, or not new, I bought it off Facebook Marketplace, but you know, I would have spent the money new if I couldn't have found one on Facebook Marketplace. So I'm a big believer. When I rode carbureted bikes, I threw one of these on my 300 XCW. Can't complain. I have friends who've done the same, and they really have no complaints. So as far as that's concerned, I think the Electron is always a good look. The bike came with a key-in that had a JD jetting kit from the previous owner, and it ran good, you know, but as far as for smoothness and power, you just can't beat the Electron. We're riding off-road through rocky terrain, and the smoother the power, the better. So that's definitely the second thing I would suggest. Another thing that I wanted to show you guys is just how crispy this Electron is. So I'm going to go in here. The choke is a bit of a bitch, used on like the mini Billitrons. Not the Billitron, just whatever the older model is. The newer ones I think have it on the other side, which is easier to get to. But I'm going to pull that up. You're going to see how quick and easy this bike starts with it. It's crazy. As soon as you start the bike, you want to take the choke off. I can put my hand on the pipe, it's like it's cold. Put my hand right near the header. So another thing that these bikes don't come with, because they're motocross bikes, and we don't really ride motocross, we ride on national forests, is you want to get a spark arrestor. So this bike came with the Enduro Engineering end cap already, but the screen was not in there. So I bought it a screen. I don't know if you can see, but I bought a screen for it. They come in packs of 2. I'll show the price for that as well. It's just something you gotta contend with when you ride national forests and a lot of state areas as well. So if you do have any law enforcement come and inspect your bike and you don't have a Forest Service approved screen, you're definitely going to get a headache from that. You know, like maybe a warning or sometimes even a ticket. So that's definitely another thing that I would suggest you want to do if you're building a bike for the trails. As far as the pipe is concerned, it came with the Gold Series Fatty. Whenever we bang this pipe up and it's ready for a new one, I'm probably going to go for the Gnarly. If they make them for this bike, I'm not really quite sure. Maybe I'll put an update for that when I edit the video, but for right now we're running the FMF Fatty with the stock canister on the silencer with the aforementioned Enduro Engineering end cap, and that's good for right now. If I beat this thing up, I'll probably put a turbine core on it like I have on my bike. I think those things are legit. You don't have to worry about the screen clogging, so that's definitely something to look into. Another thing that I do with every bike that I get for my son, I like these Cherby mini rally I think controls guards, and I'll put the price as well on this when we add it all up. And I like them because they can get tight and you can save your clutch levers, but if you were to ever slip your arm through here when you're crashing, they have some movement to them, so it's not something he's likely to break his arm on. Might leave a bruise, but you're definitely not going to break your arm on these, which I kind of like. They move a little bit. So another thing that I like to do, if I can find them, which I could not on my son's 0565 KTM, is run these Cherby guards, frame guards. And I run them on my 2020 300 XEW. I like them. You get a good positive grip on the frame of the bike, and that saves you energy, and it saves wear on the frame. Plus, when you dump the bike, you know, keeps stuff from getting banged up as well. So that's definitely something that I would suggest that people run if you can find them for the bike that you're getting. I understand not everybody can, you know, get a newer bike which has a lot higher of an availability for parts, but that's definitely something you should look into. Another thing I do is I upgrade the seat cover, because usually when I get a bike the seat cover is whooped. I like this particular design. It's by Enjoy Manufacturing. Found this really cool one. It matched the color of the plastics that I was going to put on the bike, which are the 2023 colorway of plastics. I'm still waiting on the graphics, but that's not the most important thing. But yeah, when you need to sit down in your seat and weight the rear wheel, you know, sometimes in rough terrain, it's nice to have these little ribs in here that help you stay planted and weight the bike properly. So that's definitely another thing you should consider. Another thing I did, because my son is just on a tad on the small side for this bike, since we're not going to be jumping it off big jumps, I lowered the suspension, the rear suspension, with the adjuster for the spring. You can see there's about a ½ inch in between that, but with this design I'm not worried about anything falling off. It's got a solid plate on the bottom that you won't lose if it's too loose or if you decompress the suspension going over whoops. So this is what I did to lower the bike for my kid. I also raised the forks in the triple clamp in order to it tightens the steering, number one, and it also lowers the bike, so it makes it more comfortable for him to ride. And that's definitely a good look when you're getting your kid on a bike that he might be a tad small for. But the bigger wheels and more suspension that this bike offers, I think, is going to make it a lot easier for to get over a lot of the big rocks and roots and type of stuff that we like to ride. So that's why I got him on this bike as soon as I could. Another part that I'm actually new to is the AER 43 air forks. So the spring side is an air spring. It's on this side, and then all the dampening is done on this side. So I would suggest that for whatever your kid's weight is, and just look it up, maybe run a bit softer if you plan on going through a little bit more choppy terrain and a little bit lower speed. And think you should be good. Also understand that depending on the type of riding you're doing, the pressure in the air bladder will increase due to the heat. So just always run it a little bit lower than where you want it to be, because it'll heat up and kind of and get to a point to where it's going to be warmer than it started, which means higher PSI as well, more spring. So that's that as far as the forks go. His last bike was a sprung fork, and you know, didn't really have to deal with the air side of it. So that is something to consider if you do have the AER forks. Another thing I do is I always go for bigger pegs, because it just makes it more comfortable, more space for the boot. And these ones were some cheap Amazon ones that I got for like 30 bucks. You could go with the bulletproof ones. I have them on my bike, but for a kid's bike, I figured I'll just get the cheap ones. They work just as good. They're CNC machined CNC aluminum pieces, and then they have these little replaceable little spikes right here. So I usually do that on my kid's bike anytime I get him and set it up. Another thing, which I haven't done yet, which I might do, is get a bigger brake tip. Just makes it easier to find it in crazy oh shit moments. So another thing that I would suggest on these smaller motocross bikes, because the tanks they come with are maybe a gallon, maybe 1.3 gallons. I was able to find this also on Facebook Marketplace around the same time when I got the Electron carb. So I saved a lot of money on that. I got this for a really good steal of a deal. This is a $392 tank, I believe, and I paid $175 for it, you know, with no tax, no shipping, off Facebook Marketplace. This particular tank, I think, is 2.3 or 2.4 gallons, and with the Electron carb, this thing will go forever. It'll go longer than my bike, because I have the stock tank on my 300 XCW, and that's the same size as this, I believe, gallon-wise. So that's definitely a big thing. It doesn't make the bike feel any more wide. They did a good job with it, and it doesn't really make it feel that much more top heavy. They keep a lot of the fuel closer to the center mass of the bike, or the center of gravity, and it's a good fit so far. My son didn't seem to notice much difference when riding with this on as opposed to the stock tank. So this will allow us, you know, when we go back to Idaho, or, you know, we're out at Georgetown, or we're out in the desert, to where I'm not having anxiety about his range. So this was definitely a well worth it purchase that I would suggest, if you can find one for your kid's bike, definitely do it too. One of the other things I do when I first get a bike is I usually buy a new chain. You don't know what type of abuse it's been through and what the maintenance on it's been, and it's such an easy part, and it's not terribly expensive. I'll show the price for this as well. I always like to go with the gold chains. That's just preference. I go with the non O-ring because I wash the bike so regularly that water gets trapped in the O-rings if you get too close with a pressure sprayer, which I do. I like to get all in the nooks and crannies. So I went with the non O-ring gold chain, and it's definitely a looker, that's for sure. I like to go with the gold chains, so it's definitely something I always do. Another thing I would suggest that is really important if you're going to off-road the bike is get a good skid plate. For this one, it came with the Acherbys one. I took off the orange Acherbys logo because I just didn't feel like it matched the scheme of the bike. But yeah, this is a pretty decent one. There's other ones out there, but I like the Acherbys ones. I'm also running an Acherbys skid plate on my 300 XCW, so it's definitely a big part if you wanna off-road. And one of the most important things that you can do for any bike is the tire. Now this bike came with a Maxxis K760, or I'm sorry, a Kenda. It came with Maxxis in the front, so it came with a Kenda K760. This is an off-road biased tire, I would say. It's definitely not a motocross tire. The front tire, I have my preferences, but this is good enough for right now. But yeah, usually I go with the IRCs for the rear. I think I got my son an IRC on his other bike as soon as this tire's done. Still got a little bit of life left, so I figure why not, because I got a bunch of money in this bike already. I'm definitely going to throw an IRC on there, because I was really impressed how the IRC, I think it was a 505 or something like that, that I put on my other kid's bike did in Idaho. So I'll definitely be putting another one of those on. Here's the kickstand that I got from Fastway, but because the bike was lowered, I had to cut the kickstand and then use some JB Weld or steel stick type stuff, and I made another foot for it. Once the bike is back at full height, I'll weld the part that I cut off it. But yeah, this is about 174 bucks plus tax and shipping. Had to cut the cover a little bit to fit it in, but probably have to trim it a little bit more. This still isn't kind of sitting how I want. But yeah, that's the final piece in this build as far as functionality goes. I got some graphics coming. I might do a video on that when they come in. But yeah, that's pretty much the last part. Definitely could definitely be used on the trails, that's for sure. That was my review video of what I did for my kid's 2018 Husqvarna TC 85, which was initially a motocross bike, and I just went through and, you know, we'll add up the total and kind of see what it all came out to, and you guys can see if that's you know, something that's feasible for you. Just so you guys know, I bought the bike for 2,500 bucks. This bike and the new 2023 and 2024 bikes are mechanically no different. They have all the same exact suspension components, as well as motor and transmission. I believe as well as the same brakes. So just to note that, I never buy bikes brand new except for my bike, which I bought brand new during COVID because I couldn't find a good used one for a reasonable price. But this one, I'm 2,500 into it. I know a brand new one of these is somewhere like 6.5, 7 grand. It wasn't really in my budget, so this was too good of a deal to pass up. So I figured I'd get my kid on this, and you know, what I have into this bike may not be necessarily what you get everything for, but so I'll show a brand new price and what I actually paid for stuff. We'll have the comparison on that. So that's kind of been me covering that. And if you guys like what I have in my content, make sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to see more. And I'll see you on the next one, boys. Peace out.